The first time Instructor Veln saw a human bleed, he almost filed an incident report for biological warfare. It happened during a joint interspecies field exercise on the outer colony of Duren IV, a lush, semi-wild planet used for training cadets in unpredictable terrain. The Galactic Academy had sent a mixed group of students from various species, including a small Earth delegation. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic scene, and the other species hadn't yet sorted out what to make of them. The human male assigned to Veln's team was named Travis Ziegler, a former civilian emergency responder turned diplomatic field student. Veln had reviewed his file more than once, mostly to confirm he was not misreading the part where Travis had voluntarily entered collapsing buildings to drag people out of burning debris. It had sounded like suicidal behavior, not heroism. On the third day of the exercise, the team was traversing a dense jungle basin. The local flora was harmless unless provoked, but the terrain was a tangled nightmare. Veln hovered on his grav lift, observing the students struggling through the muck. Travis was ahead, machete in hand, clearing a path. "Watch that root system," Veln called out, translating into galactic common. "It's unstable." Travis turned to acknowledge him right as the ground gave way beneath his left foot. He fell hard. The others halted immediately, forming a perimeter while Veln lowered his grav lift. Travis sat up slowly, grimacing. His right forearm was split open, a jagged tear across the skin from wrist to elbow. Blood flowed freely, too much for Veln's liking. "Do not move, Travis," Veln ordered, pulling out a sterile sealant from the med kit. "You are hemorrhaging." "I'm fine," Travis muttered, his voice tight. "Just a cut. Let me see it." "It is not just a cut," Veln said. "You are experiencing soft tissue breach. Exposure risk is high. We must decontaminate and seal." Travis ignored the outstretched nozzle of the sealant and reached into his own pack. He pulled out a small metal bottle, twisted the cap, and poured the contents directly onto the open wound. Veln recoiled. A hiss rose from the flesh, and Travis gritted his teeth, his face contorting as he tensed. "Why are you doing that?" Veln asked, horror creeping into his voice. "That fluid is corrosive. You are burning yourself. It's just alcohol," Travis said through clenched teeth. "It cleans the wound." "It what?" "Kills bacteria, better than risking infection. You are applying a known corrosive chemical to open flesh to prevent microbial intrusion." "Yeah, it stings like hell, but it works." Veln looked around at the other alien students. Some were frozen, others looked visibly distressed. One of the reptilian cadets had turned a pale shade of green. "You do this regularly?" Veln asked. "If you get cut, yeah, you clean it, wrap it, and keep it dry till it scabs. Pretty standard." Veln stared in disbelief. "You did not wait for medical personnel. You did not sterilize with proper field gel. You did not use a dermal sealer. You used ethanol, rubbing alcohol," Travis corrected. 70%, strong enough to kill germs, not so strong it destroys tissue." Veln blinked his secondary eyelids. "You voluntarily inflict pain to prevent infection." "Pain's temporary," Travis said, now wrapping gauze around the cleaned wound. "Infection can kill you." The team resumed movement, but the mood had changed. The alien students kept glancing at Travis like he was a mildly deranged predator. Veln kept his grav lift close. Later that evening, the group set up camp. Travis sat near the central fire pit, his arm bandaged and elevated. Veln approached him carefully, holding a data tablet. "I have conducted a medical inquiry," Veln said. "It confirms your method is medically sound. Barbaric but effective. Thanks, I think. Do all humans do this?" "Most, especially if you're somewhere without access to a hospital." Veln hesitated. "Our instructors warned us that humans were excessively cautious about infection, that you feared it above all else. We assumed sterilization was your obsession." "It is," Travis said. "That's why we clean wounds so aggressively. Better to hurt now than rot later." Veln sat beside him, watching the flames dance. "Your methods are extreme. Your planet doesn't have tetanus bacteria." Veln paused. That explains nothing, but I will accept it. The next day, the group continued into a rocky canyon. The terrain was treacherous and narrow, the stones slick with morning condensation. Veln hovered ahead, scanning for safe paths. Travis, take the left ridge, he ordered. It's more secure. Travis nodded and climbed the slope. Midway up, a shale slab shifted under his boot. He dropped fast, catching himself with his hands. A sharp yelp escaped him. Veln swooped down. Report. Rolled my ankle, Travis said, trying to put weight on it. Not broken, I don't think. We will confirm. Veln activated a portable scanner, sweeping the beam over Travis's leg. The readout showed a moderate sprain, ligaments stretched but intact. You will not walk unassisted, Veln said. I will call for evac. No, Travis said quickly. We're 2 days out. I can hobble. You should not. I've had worse. Just help me wrap it. Veln watched him fashion a brace from his pack straps and a stick. Travis moved slowly but insisted on walking. The alien students parted as he limped past, their expressions ranging from awe to suspicion. By the time the team returned to base camp, Travis had collected another scrape on his left palm and a shallow gash above his eyebrow. Each was treated with the same ritual: rinse, alcohol, grit teeth, wrap. Within the academy, word spread. The humans fear infection, the students whispered, but not how we do. They fear it enough to face pain directly. In the following weeks, the alien students began observing human hygiene rituals with renewed scrutiny. They watched Travis and the other humans disinfect surfaces, wash hands obsessively, and check food expiry labels. But what unsettled them most was the humans' willingness to endure pain for prevention. No sedatives, no numbing agents, just resolve. In a comparative biology class, Instructor Veln stood before a chart showing the wound response of various species. Humans, he said, pointing to a graph, experience higher pain response to skin lacerations than any other known species, and yet they inflict that pain willingly. A tentacled student raised a limb. Why not use dermal sealers immediately? Because, Veln said, they prefer to flush the wound first, with alcohol. The class recoiled. Weeks later, during a controlled hazard simulation, another human student, Emily Jansen, sustained a minor puncture wound. Before the medbot could respond, she poured alcohol on it. 3 alien cadets fainted. After the simulation, Veln found Travis seated in the mess hall, balancing a tray with one hand while the other arm rested in a sling. You have started a trend, Veln said, setting his own tray down. One of the reptilian students attempted to disinfect a scrape using your method. He required tail grafts. Yeah, don't do that if your skin doesn't regenerate the same way, Travis said. Why do you not fear pain? We do. We just fear what happens if we ignore it more. Veln nodded slowly. You are a strange species. Thanks. We try. That night, Veln submitted a recommendation. All alien cadets participating in joint human exercises must be briefed on Earth-standard first aid practices. Not just for safety, though that was a factor, but because watching humans treat their wounds was causing minor psychological trauma among the other cadets. The Galactic Council approved the recommendation. 6 months later, during a conference on interspecies resilience, Veln presented a paper titled Alcohol, Infection, and the Human Paradox, an analysis of pain, prevention, and psychological impact. His concluding slide displayed a photo of Travis smiling awkwardly, a fresh bandage on his arm. Veln looked out at the gathered scholars. They do not fear infection less than us, he said. They fear it enough to meet it halfway with fire. There was silence. Then a cautious round of applause. Back at the academy, Travis sat with his leg elevated, ankle still healing. He sipped water and flipped through a field survival manual. Emily walked by, glanced down, and said, "Another injury?" "Slipped during a terrain run," Travis said. "Nothing serious. You know, you're starting to make us look like we're all masochists." Travis shrugged. "Better a burn than an infection." She shook her head and walked off. Travis leaned back and closed his eyes. His ankle throbbed, his arm itched under the healing bandage, and somewhere in the halls, an alien student was loudly refusing to touch a bottle of alcohol. He smiled faintly. Pain was temporary, but the lesson stuck. Travis had just finished threading a replacement lace through his boot when the door to the field infirmary slid open with a hydraulic sigh. A tall, translucent-skinned Arathi student ducked inside, clutching a data slate and looking vaguely nauseated. "You're the human who poured combustant fluid into your own muscle tear," the Arathi announced without preamble. "I cleaned a cut with alcohol," Travis said, tugging the boot tight. "Not sure I'd call it combustant." "I ran simulations," the Arathi continued, stepping farther in. "Your ethanol exposure should have led to dermal necrosis in at least 4% of your upper tissue layers." "Appreciate the concern," Travis said, flexing the ankle experimentally. "But I'm good." The Arathi squinted, his semi-transparent skin pulsing faintly with violet irritation. "You should not be." A soft chime sounded from the corner, where a cylindrical med assistant was scanning a tray of instruments. The machine hummed approval at Travis's vitals and retracted its arm. "See," Travis said, gesturing to the bot. "Not dead. Yet." The Arathi walked a slow circle around him as if expecting parts to fall off. "I'm Arun," he said finally. "Third-tier physiology track. I've been assigned to shadow human biological responses during joint deployments." Travis, same program, different angle. "Mostly crisis resilience." Arun tapped the slate. "I have questions." "Of course you do. Why didn't you request numbing? Didn't have any. Why didn't you wait for a sterile pod? No time. You sliced open your arm on exposed rock and applied an agent we use for removing resin adhesive. Better than getting a festering wound." Arun paused. "Festering? Yeah, pus, swelling, fever, delirium, death. The usual." Arun blinked slowly. "You're saying humans experience necrotic progression from minor trauma? We can if it gets infected, especially in jungle environments." Arun sat down abruptly on the med cot opposite. "How have you not gone extinct?" Travis shrugged. "We figured out soap early." Arun stared, then began typing furiously into the slate. "This rewrites 3 chapters of my comparative resistance thesis." There was a long silence as the Arathi muttered to himself, occasionally glancing up as if to confirm Travis hadn't suddenly keeled over. Travis leaned back and let him work. Eventually, Arun looked up again. "Do you have other methods for wound prevention?" "Sure. Bandages, antiseptic sprays, iodine tinctures, hydrogen peroxide, triple antibiotic ointments, butterfly closures, surgical glue." "Glue, medical adhesive, binds skin together when stitches aren't available." Arun looked alarmed. "You weld your own skin." "Only the top layer. You should see how we fix broken bones." Arun made a strangled noise and stood. "I need to recalibrate my pain tolerance models." As he turned to leave, the door opened again and Instructor Veln entered, his color bands dimmed to a contemplative blue. "Arun, you survived the interview?" "Barely," the Arathi said, brushing past. "I need a sensory recalibration chamber." Veln watched him go, then turned to Travis. "You made quite the impression," he asked. Veln approached the med assistant and reviewed the logs. "Your ankle is healing within human norms. You've avoided stress on the joint for 48 planetary hours, more or less. You limped through a terrain run. I went around the incline." Veln exhaled through his gill vents. "The Reptari have begun wearing gloves when near you. Makes sense." "You are becoming symbolic," Travis grimaced. "I was hoping to just be a student. Too late for that." They both turned as a low alert tone sounded from the corridor speaker. A field team had triggered a medical flag during a training simulation in the Marsh Quadrant. Veln tapped his comm. "Team 12, confirm status." A garbled reply came through, mostly static, but a few words were audible. "Bite, something, bleeding." Veln looked at Travis. "You're familiar with field triage." Travis was already on his feet, testing the ankle. "Lead the way." They reached the marsh boundary within 20 minutes, traveling by low hover transport. The simulation was meant to mimic unknown terrain navigation, thick reeds, unstable ground, and scattered biopods that released noxious gas if disturbed. Near the edge of a shallow bog, two cadets stood over a third who was seated on a rock, clutching his leg. The injured student, a young Duren with copper-toned scales, was grimacing and hissing softly. Blood oozed between clawed fingers. "What happened?" Veln asked. The other cadet, a noily with a wide, frilled neck, looked shaken. He stepped on a burrow nest. Something latched on and bit deep before slithering off. Travis knelt beside the Duren, who bared his teeth. "I can manage." "Let me see," Travis said, already pulling out his kit. The bite was deep, with 2 puncture wounds and torn flesh around the calf. The bleeding was steady but not gushing. "Not arterial," Travis muttered. "That's good." He cleaned the area with saline first, careful not to touch the raw edges. The Duren flinched. "Hold still," Travis said. "I'm trying not to make this worse. You're not a medtech." "No, but I've cleaned worse-off kids who fell off skateboards." "That's not comforting." Travis pulled out a sterile gauze pad and pressed it to the wound. "You allergic to iodine?" The Duren blinked. "What is that?" "Never mind." He reached for a small brown bottle and uncapped it. The noily student gasped. "That's the burning liquid." Travis didn't respond. He soaked a pad and dabbed it gently around the bite, careful to avoid the deepest part. The Duren hissed again. "That stings." "Means it's working." "You humans are obsessed with pain." "No, we just hate infections more." He finished wrapping the leg with compression bandage, then stabilized it with a brace from the emergency frame. "Keep that elevated and don't walk unless someone's helping," Travis said. "That thing might have had bacteria on its fangs." Veln approached, inspecting the work. "Efficient, minimal bleeding, clean lines. Didn't cauterize this time, thank the stars." The Duren looked at Veln. "He poured acid on my leg." "It was iodine," Travis said. "Mild antiseptic, won't melt your scales." The noily looked queasy. "Can I go now?" "Escort him back," Veln said, gesturing toward the transport. When they were alone, Veln turned to Travis. "You're not on duty." "Why did you respond?" "Because he was bleeding." "There are bots for that, not fast enough." "You're not required to risk aggravating your own injury." "I didn't. An extra limp is worth avoiding sepsis." Veln regarded him quietly. "You are aware your behavior is unnerving others." "I'm not doing it for show. I know." They returned to base as dusk settled over the training fields. The marsh lights flickered on, casting narrow blue beams through the fog. Inside the infirmary, the med assistant updated its logs with the Duren's vitals. Stabilized. No sign of envenomation. Veln stood beside Travis, watching the readout. "You understand," Veln said slowly, "that to some of these cadets you are no longer simply human. You are a category. Not sure I like that. It is not a question of liking. You are becoming illustrative." Travis folded his arms. "Of what?" "Adaptation under duress. Pain as a calculated risk. Preventative suffering." Sounds like a bad adventure novel. Veln's tone darkened slightly. "It sounds like something some species have never considered. You're changing their assumptions." Travis didn't answer. From outside, the sound of rain began to patter against the plexiglass panels. A field light flickered and steadied. Veln turned to leave, then paused. "Tomorrow, I want you to attend the Comparative Emergency Protocols seminar. The instructor has requested your perspective." "I'm not a medic." "You are something rarer. You are a human who acts before being told. That frightens them." He left. Alone, Travis sat beside the med assistant, listening to the soft clinks of auto-sterilization. He rested his ankle on the bench and leaned back. It wasn't about bravery or proving anything. It was just what you did when someone was hurt. But in this place, apparently, that was enough to start a minor cultural crisis. The lecture hall was already half full when Travis arrived, one crutch tucked under his arm, his ankle bandaged beneath a loosely tied boot. The chairs were arranged in a tiered semicircle around a central platform, where a large holodisplay flickered through slides of emergency scenarios. Atmospheric ruptures, decompression events, venomous injuries. A few alien cadets glanced at him when he entered. None said anything, but their eyes lingered longer than casual observation required. He found an open seat near the middle. The air buzzed faintly, filtered with ozone from the climate regulators. Across the room, Arun was hunched over a console, entering data with the frantic energy of someone who'd had 3 hours of sleep and too many unanswered questions. A tall, coral-hued instructor with 3 eyes, Instructor Zelt, if Travis remembered right, stepped onto the platform. The room dimmed slightly. Today's topic, Zelt began, is incident response without ideal resources. Improvisation. Some of you will find this concept uncomfortable. A few chuckles stirred among the insectoids near the back. Arun didn't look up. Zelt waved a limb and the holodisplay shifted to show a collapsed tunnel system. This simulation involves a structural cave-in. The med pods are inaccessible. You have basic supplies, no external support. Your task: stabilize a teammate with a compound fracture and potential lacerated artery. Travis rested his chin on his hand. The scenario looked familiar. He'd seen a real version of it under a freeway overpass once, except the air had reeked of gasoline and panic. Zelt continued, "You will be divided into trios. 1 human participant has been requested for each group. I believe you all know why." This time, someone did snicker. Travis stood when his name was called, joined by 2 others. A Senari with a narrow frame and bioluminescent skin, and a stocky, armor-plated Vec who didn't even try to hide his skepticism. The simulation room was cold and dimly lit, the floor covered in soft debris and foam rubble. A humanoid training dummy lay twisted beneath a console prop, its leg bent at a wrong angle and a red fluid pouch slowly leaking. "Timer begins now," Zelt called out. The Vec went straight for the dummy, scanning it with a wrist device. "Fracture confirmed." "Major vessel breach probable," the Senari knelt beside him. "We should request override access to deploy the auto-sealant." "There is none," Travis said. "That's the point." "You're not the lead," the Vec snapped. "No, but I've treated this before." "We need a tourniquet now." "I am calculating pressure points." Travis dropped his pack, pulled out a triangular sling and folded it into a thick band. "Too slow. Here." He slipped it under the dummy's thigh just above the injury and tied it off. "You twist until the bleeding slows." "Then we splint." The Senari handed him a carbon rod from the supply crate. Travis aligned it along the dummy's leg, patting it with spare cloth and securing it with tape. The red liquid slowed, bleeding controlled, the Vec muttered, not quite meeting his eyes. "Not done." Travis pulled out a pressure dressing and wrapped the wound site, tightening it with practiced hands. "Fractures stabilized, blood loss minimized, keep the leg immobile," Zelt's voice echoed through the calm. "Time 4 minutes 12 seconds. "Response complete." The lights came up. Travis leaned back against the wall, breathing evenly. The Vec was still staring at the dressing. "You didn't scan," he said finally. "No time. You didn't test pressure ratios." "I've seen blood spray like that before." "It always means the same thing." The Senari tilted her head. "How many times have you done this?" Travis shrugged. "Enough." Zelt entered the room, antennae twitching with interest. Very efficient. Improvisation was alarmingly confident. Travis wiped his hands on a cloth. "We didn't have pocket scanners in the field back home. You learn to spot real problems fast." The Vec stared at the dummy's leg again. "We're taught that any misalignment risks permanent nerve damage." "True," Travis said. "But dead nerves are better than a dead person." Zelt gestured them back toward the lecture hall. "Debrief in 10 minutes. Cadet Ziegler, if you're available, remain. There's been a request for demonstration." Travis nodded and stayed behind while the others filed out. The instructor waited until the room cleared before speaking again. "Your methods are blunt. They work. Which is why we're adapting our curriculum. Controlled improvisation modules are being added to the next cycle." Your file will be referenced. I didn't do anything special, Zelt raised one eye ridge. You used a cravat as a tourniquet and gauze from a ration pack on a structural collapse victim. That is not standard. Travis sat down on a crate. Neither are real emergencies. At that moment, Arun stepped through the door, clutching a datapad like it was a survival tool. He looked at the dummy, then Travis, then Zelt. I've finished the analysis, Arun said. Human injury response efficiency increases under pressure. But only if they've had prior exposure to pain-based learning. Zelt tilted his head. You're saying their resilience is experiential? More than that. They calibrate danger based on what they've survived, not what they were told might happen. Travis raised an eyebrow. You're just figuring that out, Arun ignored him. They don't just tolerate pain, they use it to fine-tune their response systems. That's why their methods seem reckless until you realize they're based on direct stimulus memory. Zelt turned back to Travis. Do you agree? Mostly, he said. But it's not just memory, it's knowing no one else is coming. That changes how fast you move. Arun blinked. You mean you act because you assume no one else will? Not assume. Learn, Zelt nodded slowly. I'll include that in the module. Arun looked at Travis again. I reran your treatment record from the marsh quadrant. The antiseptic you used is effective against over 70 microbial strains, but causes tissue dehydration. Better dry than infected. I added it to the comparative pharmacology database. With a caution tag, Travis stood, testing his ankle. The stiffness was fading. Glad to help, Zelt gestured to the door. The others are waiting. You've inspired a few to try field improvisation drills. Some of them are overly ambitious. Travis sighed. Please tell me no one's pouring vinegar into abrasions. Not yet. They returned to the lecture hall, where a small crowd had gathered around a display table lined with makeshift medical supplies. A Reptari cadet was attempting to fashion a splint using meal utensils and adhesive strips. Another was testing bandage tension with a robotic limb. See, Zelt said softly, illustrative. Travis folded his arms. They're gonna hurt themselves. They won't. They're curious, and now they're cautious. Arun stood near the edge of the group, silently observing. His datapad beeped once and he tapped it without looking. Then he turned to Travis. Do you think, he asked, that your species is defined by its pain tolerance? No, Travis said. We're defined by what we do with it. He stepped past the table, adjusted the Reptari's splint with a quick twist and nodded at Zelt. I'm heading out. I've got hydrotherapy in 20. Zelt inclined his head. Dismissed. As Travis limped to the door, the room buzzed with discussion. Alien cadets debating tourniquet placement, splint materials, and whether boiling cloth was really necessary in a sterile environment. He didn't stop them. Outside, the corridor lights were warm and steady. The air smelled like recycled pine, something the maintenance team had added to simulate earth forests. He liked it better than the antiseptic tang of the infirmary. At the far end of the hallway, a pair of new cadets passed, whispering in a language he didn't recognize. One of them glanced back at him, eyes wide. He kept walking. No one fainted this time. That was progress.